everyone?
Hi.
Good. Starting good. So I'm going to talk about Perl 5. I say the word Perl often, so whenever I say Perl, imagine I said Perl 5. Okay? I'm going to talk about 524. I'm going to talk about 526. 524 is already out. It's running. A lot of people don't really know what's in it, so I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about what we're going to have in 526, which comes out very, very soon, as in 2 months. And then I'm going to talk about what might happen in future versions. And I'm going to mention a lot of things that are history, policy, ideas, and hopefully give you kind of the tone that we're trying to get in Perl nowadays. And I think it's very, very crucial and important to hear it the way we see it. So let's start with basics. I was told I always need to start with, like, who are you? Because, like, a lot of people don't know, and that's a good thing, but now you do. So I'm Sawyer. You can call me Sawyer. That's the easiest way. And I do a lot of Perl. I enjoy it very much. I write in various languages. Perl is my favorite. I have a lot of fun with it. Luckily enough, I work at a company that actually pays me to do it. That's even better. I'm currently the Perl 5 Pumpkin, which is the role of the kind of like the project lead on the language. It's very odd. It's very heavy. It's very scary. But with people like you, it's a lot of fun too, so it's great. I also am the project lead of a small web framework in Perl called Answer 2. And I work at Booking.com, and obviously we're hiring. Is anyone else here hiring by any chance? Any hands? I got one. Yeah, I think I saw like 7 people with "We're hiring" shirts. Or what's this? So there are a few. I mean, 1 or 2. All right. So what I'm going to start with is development. Once a month, we work on a release that collects all of the development that we've done during that month. And then we bundle all of that together and we throw it out as a development release. We do this every month. And the reason is that we do this in order to collect information about those changes and to see how stable they were, what kind of changes and impacts they've made, and what kind of alterations we want to this. So it's kind of like, I guess nowadays we call this agile. So, well, it used to be like you work on a workflow for waterfall workflow for like, I don't know, 6 months, and then you have the product, or you work on it for 2 years, and then you have the product. We just have it every month. The last one was released 2 weeks ago by Abigail, and it was 525.9, which means that the next one will be 525.10, and that will eventually lead to a stable release. So every single month, you get a new set of changes that you can install and you can run. You probably shouldn't, but you can. And when we talk about development, obviously there's a difference. There's development, there's stable. We also do stable releases, which means every so often we collect all those development changes, we bundle all together, and then we send it off, and that's a new stable release. So how do we get there? Well, we start with a lot of smoking. Now, I come from Amsterdam, so this might mean more than one thing. But when we talk about smoking in Perl, we actually mean testing. That's what we mean. So we do a lot of testing, a lot of smoking. And I guess in Amsterdam, a lot of people are also doing a lot of smoking. And one of the things that we smoke is CPAN. See here. And smoking CPAN means not just running our own tests, but instead taking all of CPAN, like all of CPAN, which is huge. It's massive. It's huge with a Y, right? It's a Trump huge. And huge. And we run all of CPAN, all of its tests of every distribution that we can against Perl, just to see what's going to happen. Like maybe we broke something, maybe we broke a module. So then we collect that information, and then we decide on it. And maybe we need to change something. Maybe they need to change something. And that's what we do as well. And stable releases come out every single year. So once a year, we take all of these and we throw it out. That is now a new stable version of Perl. You can download it, you can run it, you can move your company to it, you can upgrade, all of that. There are a lot of ways to install Perl. There are a lot of ways to get it. If you're using one of these distributions, GNU Linux or BSD or Solaris or APX or ZOS or Herd, they're all supported. Perl supports a massive amount of operating systems. I'm not sure why, but we do, and it's great. So you can do that. You can also download Strawberry Perl. You can also get Active State and have Active Perl, and you can download those and use them. They're meant for Windows. They're very good. And you can also download and install whatever version you want locally on your machine, on your own. No need for distribution. Just go to perlbrew.pl. This is a domain. That's why it looks like that. And if you go there, you can just download this program. You can curl it straight to your bash, install it. You can run your own Perl. You can update to a new version of Perl. You can try a development version of Perl. What did I say? Did I say something bad?
Oh, not too bad. Not too nice.
Curl.
Sorry.
To bash. Well, that's one of the ways to install. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Security, I mean, maybe. Okay. Now, we also do a lot of backporting. There are mainly two releases of Perl that we support at a given time. Currently, it would be 524 and 522. We have just released 524.1, which means a new version of that stable branch, and 522.3, which is a new version of that stable branch. And these collect additional changes that we've done after we've released the stable one. And this includes various things like maybe we found a new security issue, or maybe we found a new bug fix that is actually very important. And we'll put all of those in one release, and they usually come out 1 month after the stable release. So 524.1 and 522.3 were an odd one due to a security consideration. It took us a bit more time to get it done the way we wanted. And they usually come out like a month after. So 524.1 should come out a month after 524.0. 524.2 will come out a month after, and 522.4 will come out, which will be the very interesting, the most confusing combination. It will be 524.2 and 522.4. Okay. So, as the first problem of changing my slides to Steam, this. We have a lot of considerations when we work on Perl and when we develop it and when we make changes. Not everyone agrees with us, that is fine, but I want you to know what those are. First, we care about consistency. There are a lot of suggestions, things that people say, oh, we should add this to Perl 5, we should add this to Perl 5, and sometimes it's like, yeah, that's actually a cool thing, but sometimes it's like, that doesn't actually stay consistent with the way Perl thinks. You can solve it this way, it will be faster, it makes more sense. This syntax doesn't make sense. This feature actually exists over here. So we try to keep it consistent. One of the biggest things that we try to keep it compatible. Compatibility is very, very, very hard. We strive for it, but sometimes we have to break it. There are some things that are more important than compatibility, like security. Recently we made a change having to do with security. Not everyone likes it. I do feel bad, but this is much more important to us because you may not appreciate that now a line you wrote 17 years ago doesn't work, but at least it might not cost the company $400 million. So it's very important. We try to limit the breakage that we cause, so to have as little as possible, but that is actually not our prime most goal. Our prime goal is to move the target, move the language forward. We want to improve, we want to fix, we want to optimize, we want to make it a language you keep using in the future, not just one that once you had it there, it won't ever change, so nothing will break. So we try to do this while we limit breakage. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but we will be there when it does. So I keep using the word changes. What does it actually mean? Okay, let's talk about some changes. I wanted to talk about 524 and 526. So there are a bunch of stuff that happened up until 524, and not everyone knows about them. I really, really like them. I wish I could talk about them, and I can because this talk is about 524 and about 526. So here are a list of things that I'm not going to talk about. First, I'm not going to talk about Unicode strings. And what Unicode strings does, new pragma, new, not really, because it exists before 524, and it was improved over time. But basically what it does is add full support of the Unicode semantics to all of the string operations and regex operations, which is very, very useful if you use Unicode, which is nowadays almost everyone. We have custom ops. I'm not going to talk about custom ops. What they allow you to do, which is a shame I couldn't talk about them, is to actually introduce new operations into the op tree, which is really, really wild and fast and interesting. There are also applicable keywords that allow you to introduce parsing into Perl that you write in Perl, which then Perl will parse using your Perl code in order to run the Perl program. That's kind of cool, right? Okay, we can do this. There's current sub. I like current sub. Stephen mentioned it in the previous talk. This is an example of a very simple tree printer. Goes over one node and then goes over the other node. You can write in different ways, but this is the naive implementation. Simple. What if we want to make it purely functional? We just play with functions. The problem here well, as a callback, is that you can clearly see. Does anyone spot the problem? I think we're, yeah, I had Paul Evans point out the memory leaks last time I used this. Yeah, it closes over a variable that doesn't exist yet. It's still defining it, so that doesn't work. Okay, so what we can do is define that variable, and then we can close over it. Except this creates a closure in a memory leak. So that's probably not that good either. There are ways to avoid memory leaks using ref counting, so we can just break the ref count. Not a problem. We start with this program. What we do is we have the variable on top. We use this scalar util function called weaken, which weakens the link between those two references to basically make sure it doesn't recurse into itself. No problem. We weaken it. We have a new variable, and we use that new variable. Except that variable doesn't have a value, so that won't work. So that's not good either. Okay, not good. There are other ways to do this. The best way is actually to have a function that receives a function and returns a new function to that function. That would work. We get into stuff like Y combinators, things like that. It's kind of confusing. There's a simple way in Perl nowadays. Let's just clean up. This gone. This is gone. This is gone. If we call use feature current sub, we can just use that variable the way it was and use underscore sub everywhere, and that's it. Isn't that nicer? That's much nicer. Much simpler. You don't have to think. It will always be the current sub, whether it is a callback or whether it's just a sub with the name. You don't even have to care. It's nice. I love this thing. I wish I could talk about it. Okay. Fold case. Has anyone actually, who here speaks a foreign language? In foreign, I mean anything that Americans consider foreign. Not English. Pretty much everyone, including an American here. So, Unicode is hard because characters don't act the way we assume they act in English. They act in different ways in other languages. For example, in German, if you try to do something like this, that won't work. Because German has multiple characters for the same thing. And it's tricky. And that won't work. You can't just lowercase 2 one and assume it's the same one. You might have another character. That's false. You can't uppercase it either. There is a correct way to do this in Perl. Perl 5, the regex engine is Unicode aware. So you fully understand the concept of Unicode. So if you say this is a character and this is a character, it actually knows whether it's the same one. So you can do that. What we need to do is first to quote it. So this says quote and this says end quote, which basically means if this has any regex characters in them, don't turn it into a compound regex. It's just a bunch of characters. Just use them as is. And then we also have to anchor them, and the anchors are actually different, so it's confusing. And at the end, this is the trick, the case insensitive. So uppercase, lowercase, I don't care. But you can remove all of these, and instead you can use FC. FC is fold case, and what fold case does is fold it in a way that is Unicode case insensitive. Fantastic. Can't talk about it. Okay. Surprisingly enough, it was written by a guy named FC. This stands for Fathers Chrysostomos, but everyone calls him FC because no one really has the effort of saying Chrysostomos. Okay. Regex set operations, that's already in Perl. That's before 524. You can do stuff like that. This is asking for a digit of either a tie or Laotian script. Plus on these, and there, it works. You do a lot of stuff like that. Take all the word characters, except the lowercase. That works. It's already available. Lexical subroutines are already in. I love lexical subroutines because they do something really interesting. Let's say we have an app here, new. We have some kind of information, attribute, or method, and we want to call that, get either the value, or if there is no value, we want to call, this is great, we want to call the initialized value, and we want the initialized value to also set the value, and to return the value, so in the future it will be cached. I love Perl. It's like one line. That's it. So we have this, and you can clearly see that we put an underscore in front of initialized value to make sure it's private, right? Now no one can actually call it. It's safe. No one will find it. No one can call it. But now what we can do is put a my in front of it. So lexical stuff. Now no one can call it. It's very nice. It's very cool. People wanted this for a very long time. We have it. And a lot of people are like, oh, really? Yeah. So I can't talk about it. Subroutine signatures, which we always talk about. We have subroutine signatures. Take this small function. Let's put 2 variables in there for first and left and right, and then use them directly. Or maybe you want to have a third, and this one says, You know, I have a placeholder there, so I don't actually want to give it a name, but there is something there. So just make a note of that. Or maybe even give it a default value, or maybe use something that already exists and also change it every time. Why not? Or use something that actually exists earlier on. That will work. We'll do that. You will use the first name from there as a default for the nickname. And of course Slurpee, and maybe you want to change that into a hash, that'll work too, and these nice stuff. That's kind of nice. Key value slices. I use key value slices a lot. How many people use key value slices? Okay, this is really nice. You can use it now, and it's even better. So let's take this array of days. How many times did you call a function, gets a date, and then it gives you the days, and it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have to figure out. So we can take the first and last, simple slice. What you see here is an at that basically means in Perl the sigil, or 5, the sigil doesn't refer to what variable it is. It refers to what you want to receive back. What are you accessing? This is, I'm accessing multiple things. And you will find using the identifier and this access one what variable it is. And what we say is, I want to get from this array 2 items. So no problem, you get them, they'll be put in those 2. You can also give a range. I use this all the time. I use this all the time, which I go to a hash and I want to retrieve, again, multiple values. You can see this over here. And they'll give 2 keys and you will access it. This is not new. This is not new at all. What also isn't new is this new thing which has existed before 524. So let me show you. Let's say we have a hash and we want to get this. What if I want also the keys, not just the values? Usually what we would do is do a map on the keys and then get the key plus the, right? But what we can do is take this at that means multiple, but instead put it into a percent that says I want multiple, but I want it as a subset of a hash. And then when we get the keys, what it will return is an actual subset of foo and bar, including their keys and their values. Super useful. But it's not new. We already have this. This is one of the things that I use a lot. I use this a lot when I work with time. I always want to get the time, and then it gives you all the time in like an array, and then you have to figure out which one. And the month is 7. And is it starting from 0? Is it starting from, and then I create an array or a hash, and then I get the right one. It's very annoying. But instead you can do stuff like that. If you give it an array, you actually get the index as a key, which is also very useful. All right, what else do we have? Postfix dereferencing. Stephen talked about this. Not new. Not a lot of people are using it. I'm going to give you a few examples. If we have an array ref, we can dereference this way. I personally prefer dereferencing instead of just 2 sigils together. It's very confusing. I prefer to put braces on it to basically say the array that this points to. And if you have something bigger, you always have to have them anyway. But when you have something bigger, you usually write it out and then you go back and wrap it again. But postfix deref does something different. You go forward and you dereference it on the spot at the end by using these 2 characters. The at is for what you want. The start is always a start. Take this example. When I go in, get item 1, index 1, and then I got to go back and wrap it. Or I could just move forward. 1 and arrow and add start. This is great. At first it looks really weird, but then you start using it and you don't want to give it up. So it's great. Another example, I like this. I always do this. I can just continue, move forward. Great. Okay. Variable aliasing via reference. So Perl has so many different types of variables, even though it seems like it doesn't. It has a lot of containers and it has a lot of understanding of different types. And Perl also supports different ways to have your containers, like different scopes for them. So you have mine, you have local, you have our, you have all these things. One of the things that Perl has is aliasing, which means 2 variables actually affect the same thing. And this is different than a ref. A ref is the same address. So if you dereference it, you reach the same thing. But an alias means literally 2 scalars that are the same place in memory. They don't point to the same place, they are the same place. If we don't create an alias, you just put a backslash in front of the mine. That backslash basically says bar is foo. So when you change bar over here, this changes this one, which changes this one, which actually goes all the way to here, and foo is actually now 2. Because it is the same variable, which is really, really nice. You can do it in loops, stuff like that. We have improved this to to also allow the backslash right before bar. But that's actually new, so all right, some optimizations that we did do. We did a lot of optimization. I think it's very worth noting the optimizations that we do in Perl. They're very important because our code runs much, much, much faster. The Perl of yesteryear is not as fast as Perl today. So integer allocations, they're all faster. They're all faster by about 13%. The guy who worked on it is actually right over there, so way to go, Eric. Because, I mean, who uses integers, right? Eric also wrote a great blog post about it, which talks a bit about balancing considerations when you program. And it's available at blogbooking.com. So he also works at booking.com. He wrote a blog post about it. I really recommend it. We have a regex optimizer. It looks at your regex and try to optimize it. We have copy and write. Strict regular expression syntax. It's kind of cool. The multi-deref op is one of my favorite things because we often use structures that they're not flat. They have a lot of depth in them. And the multi-deref op actually avoids a lot of the problems with this when it comes to speed. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that we have a C variable. And that C, at the bottom of it, we have a hole. And at the bottom of the hole, there's a log. And there's a branch on the log at the bottom, in the hole at the bottom of the C. And on the, what is it? Branch, at the edge of a branch, I don't even remember the thing. And there's a frog there, and the frog has a tail, and on the tail there's a speck. And on the speck there's a fleck. It goes back to this poem of there's a fleck on the speck, and the tail, and the frog, and the bump of the branch, and the log. In the hole in the bottom of the C. In Perl, if Perl had to actually compile this, and Perl does compile it, it looks like this. Now this is a lot, and there is some corruption in it, so I'm going to clean it up. Thank you for noticing. It's a starting, stopping, whatever. And what you see here actually is the HLM is hash element. So go to the hash element, and then it says RB to H. It says take this reference value. I like it. I'm getting 15 minutes. We're very a lot of optimism here. Reference value to hash value, and then so dereference it, and then go to a hash, and then reference that. And all of these are the actual constant strings that Perl has in there. In 522, which is a version old, this is how it looks like. Of course, there's also cross. So let me just clean that up for you. There we go. All right. So yeah, that's pretty damn fast. Okay. CGI. Gone. Still available on CPAN. Thank you. 524. Okay, now I can actually start to talk. 15 minutes. So let's talk about 524. We removed some stuff. I want to talk about some of the stuff that we removed. The auto-deref. The auto-deref was this idea that like we have references, you could just do work on the references themselves instead of having to dereference. That would be amazing stuff. No, it wasn't. It was not amazing. So we've deprecated, and now it's gone, removed. The lexical topical variable was a really interesting idea that almost everyone misused by accident. And when we realized it's actually adding more confusion and not helping, we did the right thing. We said shit, and then we removed it. So that's gone too. This one, there was discussion about this. It's a very good example of how people will argue over things that might not matter. Who can tell me what our on a my x does? I double dare you, I won't be able to actually tell if you're right or wrong because I don't know. Same goes for a my, on an hour, on a my, and at some point we just removed it. Like, why have it? Explicit false chdir or chdir to your local directory, your home directory. If you do this, it fails. If you do this, it fails, which is very, very good. This value, what does that mean? It's uninitialized, it's uninitialized. Now, if you actually want to chdir to your home directory, instead of by accident calling one of these sort of things, you just call chdir. Simplicity. Okay, some fixes that we've done. Some of them are very important. Line numbering, almost no one uses, but when you did, and if you had something long, we had an integer overflow fixed. Explicit braces are gone. This is an example I usually would give with color, and then people would know because of the color. So what does this do?
2 digits.
2 digits, good. This was not a trick question. What does this do? This is a trick question. Right? A digit and 2 braces. Open and close. Is it obvious? No. What does this do? okay, it's a bit simpler. My syntax highlighter actually got it right, so people look at this and go, I know what it does. It's like, okay, not the point. So they're gone now. You can't do this anymore. If you want to have an actual brace, just put a backslash.
Still do the first one.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't hear. I can barely.
You can still do the first one.
Well, some of those are actually slowly. We're going over all of those to be completely fixed. All right. The search and replace in place, which basically this is we refer to this as ProPy. And in ProPy, the P and I, along with the E that just gives you a search and replace code, would change the contents of this file and save it as it is. And it's very, very useful. And the I actually receives a parameter right here if you want for backup. It's great. Except if you didn't have enough space on this to do this, whoops. So that's fixed, which is actually useful. Who can tell me what that does? Right? Does that help? Good. So this is good. So far, you're with me. Excellent. What does it do now? Wow. If anyone can actually go all the way through, I would appreciate it. No. It's like 2 hours. So previously, this was set fault, just crash. Instead, now I'm going to use a phrase that Ricardo Sigas, previous company, really liked. Instead, now Perl is just going to use all of your memory and die. Which is the right thing to do if you don't have enough. Shouldn't not so long. Alright. So gone. Some optimizations within 524. Now all of these are actually in. All of this is in. You already have it for like almost a year now. So okay, simple arithmetics are faster. When you do addition, subtraction, multiplication, all these they're much faster now. Like much faster, which is great. We reworked the entire context stack, which doesn't mean anything to you unless we broke your stuff. But what it means to everyone else is what we refer to as cheaper subroutine calls, which actually means faster subroutine calls, which means, hey, do you use subroutines? Wouldn't you like them to be like 30% faster? They are. So 30% faster as far as I remember. If you do any string matching in a regular expression and they are fixed, then they're much faster nowadays, which apparently this is how I have to write emails to get people to read them. This is a true example. Some features that we already have. Postfix deref that you saw, that's it. It's in. It's not experimental. It's in. You can use it. It's good. We restored Amiga OS support. Now you realize that when I said, like, no, seriously, it's supported in a lot of platforms, you know what I mean. And so someone was like, this breaks now. And we're like, oh. All right, let's fix it. And it wasn't that big, but we fixed it. Unicode 8, it's already in, it's already used. Unicode 9 came out after we finished with 524, and it takes a while until 526 is out. So 526 already has Unicode now, it's kind of a surprise, but 8 is already in. Some stuff that 8 provided is a lot of stuff. To most of us, this doesn't mean a lot, but there are various people who either research these languages or speak these languages, and now they can all use it natively, properly, and not just pictures and images and stuff like that. It's very important. I want to give you an example of what you can do in Perl with Unicode. It's really, really nice. So if we use 524, some char names, we take a zero with joiner, which allows us to create emojis that are combined from different symbols. And what we can do is, this is a concatenation of a heavy black heart, which is just a type of heart, with a variation selector 16. Does anyone know what variation selector 16 is?
Emoji.
Nice quote. It's a bunch of characters put together into words. No, it's a color red. So this makes a red heart, right? By just concatenating the color and the red, and the heart image. And then we can take characters, and we can take additional characters, and we can just use, encode just to ask the terminal to use UTF-8. And then we can just combine them with the zero with joiner, and to create this image. And now I would have shown you from the terminal, but Perl is more up to date than my terminal. So that worked. And then I tried to use my browser, and none of my browsers are as up to date as this like dead language. It's like, come on, Firefox, get with the program. Okay. So the diversity system in Unicode is actually already in. So the kind of stuff that I showed with the colors, you can do this with skin tones using the Fitzpatrick skin tone scheme, which allows you to represent people as who they are in their own flesh, so to speak, rather than like an ambiguous color, which is very, very important. Same for gender and stuff like that. These are really actual things that impact people, but for most of us, we kind of fit that, so we don't really care. But for a lot of people, it does fit. For most of us in programming, I guess. So if we take those modified colors, Fitzpatrick ones that are recognized, and we can just connect them together. This is from a book on a relationship that could not exist before at the time that this existed, and we can just create these nice, really nice things. So, okay, stuff in 526. I'm sort of reaching the end, not really. 526 is coming out very, very soon. It's coming out in April. So you already have it very, very soon. What kind of stuff do we have in it? We have a bunch of fixes. Here's some. POSIX temp name, gone. If you want, use file temp, which you should have. If you're using this variable for encoding, don't. It's bad. If you want to anyway, don't. But if you really, really want to, you can use either filter encoding or encoding PM has a filter. So use those or just don't. When you did a require with two leading colons that worked for some reason, for some value of work, gone. The explicit curly braces, I mentioned that. The XX, so you can put two X's, that's gone. And this doesn't crash anymore. If you had untitled logs that were star, colon, 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 you're safe now. More stuff. We accidentally broke this in 518, so it was fixed. We're sorry. And we're also discussing the concept of script runs. Is anyone familiar with the concept of security attacks on script runs in Unicode? So it's kind of like this crazy thing. We're thinking of actually changing this and fixing it and allowing someone to have a Unicode check, regex check for Unicode characters from the same script run, which is really interesting. It's not a problem in a language, it's just a problem that you, like mistakes you can make, and this tries to help you with it, and we removed usenet from the documentation because she's cheating. Okay, some optimization we did. Bare word constant strings are now constant folded, doesn't mean a lot other than it's faster. Signature subroutines have been optimized. They're now as fast as not having them, which is already a good reason to use them. In the future version, it will be even more optimized. In the future, we're hoping that subroutine signatures would be faster than not using subroutine signatures, which would be a very good reason to tell your boss that I just have to use this really sweet syntax because it's faster, not because I want to. It's just faster. And some optimizations for locality in 8 if possible. Some stuff in Unicode 9, avocado.
Yeah.
Okay, but other than avocado, because there's whiskey, and it was like, oh my god, there's whiskey. I'm like, no, avocado. Some actual things in Unicode 9, all these people can now represent themselves the way they are and speak their native tongue the way it is, which is really nice, and we can investigate these languages and research them much better. So it's very important, very good. Some additional features other than Unicode 9. Syntax improving to ref editing, I mentioned that, the backslash goes after the my. We recognize version control markers, GCC does, why shouldn't we? Unicode now uses script extensions by default, it's more accurate. We have the const attribute for subroutines, very useful. /xx is actually repurposed, and it means something new. I want to give you an example. These are two examples of regular expressions, and we obviously, it's Perl, we don't have to write this thing, we can just use the x, and this gets expanded this way, but much better. But with the double x, you can actually expand in between those, which is really, really nice, because this becomes this, and this becomes, you know, you can see D to E, G to I, and 3 to 7. And if you expand this, it looks like this, which is way better. So that's this 2 x's. You can have that in April. And in then the here docs, it's about time. I write this all the time. I have a help, I have a message. It's an optional one, so if I have it, I print an error. And then I try to print like a message using some kind of here doc. And then I write it where I think it should be. And then I realize, no, I have to move it. So, okay, that doesn't work. And then I put the terminator, and no, that won't work, so I have to move that again. And now we have this thing here. Do you see the here doc right here, beginning? You can now use a tilde there. And that will allow you, together, to actually indent the here doc to wherever you want. And suddenly it looks like this. It's much nicer, right? Such a pain. Okay. Fixed. Done. The capture variable. This is the kind of things that I write all the time to try and get them, and then try to realize that I get all of them, and no, I didn't get all of them, and then croak, and then how many did I get, and what if it's a question mark, so maybe I don't have a buzz, and then I actually have to maybe have a default for that, and then check for it. What you can do now is just use the capture. This variable right there, and gives you all of them. You can use it as a number to check. There's a hash for it. There's a bunch of stuff. New things. I have to rush this a little bit, sorry. And script extensions, I already mentioned this. Security, we're removing dot from inc. Sorry, it's actually important. Sorry. Okay? Some futuristic stuff. This is actually fairly short. 528 and above. We have some ideas. We have bug fixes already that we know we're going to do, like a lot. We've been fuzzing a lot, so we have a lot of information on various things that crash it. Various optimizations, like a ton. There's a lot of afternoon optimizations right now. It's going to be way faster, like the subject signatures I mentioned, which will no longer be experimental. The hashing is going to be faster. Maybe we'll have even vtable hashes, and maybe we'll even have a mop, you know, like who knows. We do hackathons. We started our first hackathon for the core. It was very, very successful. We will probably do more. These are my parting notes to you. We want to get closer to the community and understand the relationship between the core and what the community writes, and that includes, for example, the tool chain, to make sure that we're much more in sync about how the coding core affects real-life usages of it with CPAN itself. And we want to emphasize that communication, which is always kind of a problem for tech people. I mean, it's annoying. We're going to introduce deprecations. Specifically, we've introduced that there are no more empty deprecations. You don't get a warning that says, this has been deprecated. Instead, it says, this has been deprecated and will be removed in this version. So you can coordinate your efforts. And people really don't like deprecations. And I know it's upsetting, but think about this for a second. When did Perl 4 came out? 1991. Perl 5 came out in 1994. That was 23 years ago. 5.6 in 2000. 5.8 that a lot of people talk about, I guess. 2002 is 15 years ago. We can't have those programs necessarily always 100% continue working nowadays, especially if we want to move the language forward. I want to keep using Perl in 10 years. And that means I will want the features that I will need in 10 years to handle my company scale or my code scale and my requirements in the future. It's very, very important that we adapt to this. Someone recently said, why did you break this? It's been working since Perl 4. That's not a good claim. It doesn't convince me yet. Although that one we did undeprecate because there was no reason to break it. This is a quote that I think is very important. Ted from OpenBSD said, opinions vary as to the cost associated with keeping legacy code. At the low end, there's the argument that if it's underway, there's no harm. At the high end, Knight Capital went bankrupt after losing $400 million in 45 minutes after 8-year-old deactivated code was accidentally reactivated. And it doesn't mean start deleting stuff. What it means is there is a balance to uphold. That means that our policy on what we call BBC, which is lead Perl breaks CPAN, meaning we make a change in core in the development version and CPAN breaks. There's a module that breaks, sometimes it's more than one. What we do nowadays is actually open a ticket with the module author. We decide whether we were wrong or maybe they should update their code. We give it a grace period. We help them by submitting a patch. We do all of this nowadays. And it's something we're going to continue doing, and I hope we're going to communicate that even more. Last, rules on behavior. This is my rules of behavior, and this is the rules of behavior that we want to enforce anywhere within the Perl 5 core development, and I really suggest within the entire community. First, diversity and inclusiveness is crucial. Be welcoming. Be friendly. Be cooperative. What it means to have more people, to be inclusive, to be diverse, it means that you get more eyes on a problem, more hands involved in helping. You get more skills, you have more abilities, different skills and different abilities. It's very crucial to have. You have better code eventually, because more people see it, more people can act on it, people think differently. And it means our code is stronger and can handle more things. It's actually a very valuable code-wise thing as well. It's very practical to have. And obviously better documentation and better testing, which are all very, very important if we actually want to continue. And of course, just like a much bigger community. Because I am involved in various communities just because I enjoy it. And if I wouldn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be involved. So if we want to have an even bigger one, we should be like the most fun community ever. And we can be. On the upside, abuse is not helpful. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. No one ever said, man, I'm happy I made that person feel really bad about themselves. Ever. You have to be a vindictive, horrible person to enjoy that. That's the kind of behavior we don't accept anymore. And we shouldn't ever. Wendy just said, why be nasty? Like, why? And bitterness begets bitterness. So code, as difficult difficult as it is for me, and code is sometimes very difficult for me, bitterness is harder. Because I can deal with hard code. It's like, it's just hard. If I get help, I might be able to resolve it. But if someone's bitter, it attacks your very being. Just let it go. A really good sentence, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Go to Perl 5 quarters. It's a mailing list. You can join. You can hear what's going on. You can talk to us. You can also read the summaries at all of these places. I try to summarize every single week what was going on, what tickets we have, new, old, fixed, discussions we've had. And I think this is the last sentence I have. Let's make each other proud. Someone said it somewhere to someone else, probably. Or better yet, be excellent to each other by Abraham Lincoln. Of course, from the Bill and Ted movie, but, you know, it still works, right? Thank you very much.